Redditors, what is the fastest you've ever quit a job? So, my wife started at a Mexican restaurant, and after she cleared her first table, she went to dump the salsa from the bowl, and the manager told her to put it into the next table's salsa container. She quit after 45 minutes, and then we turned in the restaurant to the health board. They were shut down about a week afterwards to never reopen. Edit: to those who think it's not real that they were shut down about some salsa, that was the least of the concerns that they were shut down about. And my most voted comment is, of course, this incident. Next story. Working as a household help for a French family. The lady of the house did not like it that I did all of the chores quickly and then had nothing to do. She felt that she was paying me for the day and that I needed to work the entire day. So she kept finding new jobs for me to do and felt stressed because she was running out of ideas. What else she could assign me to not be wasting her money? It became too unnerving. Next story. IT job where I learned on day one I was the only IT guy in the building. Like 300 users. About 3 days in, some department manager asked if the new 100 desktops were going to be ready by tomorrow. No idea what he was talking about. So I reached out to corporate and their IT guy said something like, "Oh yeah, there's like 100 boxed PCs in the warehouse you'll have to set up an image. Forgot to mention that." I laughed, handed my badge to HR, and walked. On the way out, HR told me the last 4 people in my position had quit in the first week. I wonder why. HR, you stupid pieces. I can't swear on this channel, but oh my god, we're not even 5 minutes in and I went to strangle someone. I'm so glad OP quit. Anyway, next story. Took a job umpiring indoor cricket because I was broke and needed the money. After my second shift, I asked who I should give details to get paid, and I was told, "Oh, you're still training. You don't get paid." Told them to stick it up their ass, and I walked out. Next story. I went to work for an armored car company. I got in the truck on Monday and found a crate with about $100,000 in it that they missed on Friday. They were freaking out. They handed me a gun and then said, "Oh, you'll get your training soon." We were in big stores, taking massive amounts of money out. Not what I would call a secure scene. During the ride, one of the other guys said his goal was to shoot somebody. When we returned, I told the supervisor I'm not returning. He was pissed. That was a very effed up 8 hours of my life. Next story. Got hired on at a major ski as a member of their marketing team. First day was formal training where I was told to sit in on snowblower training. Long hours, middle of the night up a mountain in the freezing cold. Yeah, not my cup of tea. Maybe they were just doing cross-training, I thought. Next day, we're picking up equipment, and I was expected a walkie-talkie in my lift pass for being an employee, but I was given sub-zero gloves, a heavy jacket, multi-tool. Again, just thinking it was for safety. Got my schedule for the third day and was scheduled for an overnight shift. Immediately went to HR, and their response was, "That position, the marketing role, it never existed." So I quit on the spot. Next story. A fashion studio. Walked into interview for the job and they expected me to sit down and work for free for the exposure. I asked them point blank, "What the hell is going on?" And they said they didn't like my attitude and asked me to leave. Weirdest 20 minutes ever. Next story. I was at a little tortilla shop that was owned by a mean little old Mexican lady, and she was a B-word, and everyone was afraid of her. So even before the day was over, I decided that I wasn't going to go back because I wasn't going to deal with her crap. So I left, and I never went back. Next story. Got fired after almost 3 days. It was a telemarketing job. On my lunch break during my third day, I got an email that was an acceptance letter to law school. This old dude that literally looked like Tom Smykowski from Office Space I'd met that morning asked why I looked excited, and I showed him the email, and he said, "Go leave this place and don't look back." He left the break room, and about 10 minutes after my lunch, I was brought into the conference room, and the boss said I was not a good fit and will fire me so I can file unemployment. I said, okay. 2 weeks later, I was living 1,000 miles away from my hometown in my first apartment alone, about to start a new career. I really wonder how that dude I met on that lunch break is. Next story. I took a job in the produce section, closing shift at a grocery store. My first shift was a day shift training where a produce guy showed me what he expected me to do and everything to look like when he arrived in the morning. I received a call from the manager saying not to bother coming in for the closing shift the next night because they were already staffed, but to come in for the following morning shift. When I arrived for the morning shift, the day shift guy was screaming and going crazy about the mess that closing shift had left. Well, he assumed I was the reason and immediately screamed and started throwing produce at me. Truly lost his mind. We had to be physically separated. They were going to fire him, but I hated the job, refused to give a statement, and I quit on the spot. Next story. I ghosted a tech startup, and 6 months after my coworker with government background check access discovered that our founder was pending trial for stealing $50,000 of diamonds. He was later found guilty and escaped from the country before sentencing using his identical twin brother's passport.
Okay, alright, look, I don't approve of what this guy did, but you can't say he didn't live an exciting life. He didn't do a crypto scam or an NFT thing or a boxing YouTuber match. He stole $50K in diamonds and then utilized the twin brother thing. Do you think he's a criminal because he had a twin brother? Probably. I want to know about the brother. But anyway, next story.
So, 2 days into a significant career path job change, my wife was diagnosed with a very serious cancer. I had to quit in order to be the primary caregiver and then later to take care of our very young children. I didn't work again for nearly 5 years. But previous record was 4 days. Insurance company canceled my auto insurance when they heard I was delivering pizzas. Had to quit to get the insurance back. Same day, some person stole my wallet and took all of my delivery tip money. Next story. Crappy IT company. Employed me as a senior tech. They gave me 2 days of sitting in a box room cleaning filthy keyboards in a hospital. The manager at the hospital was surprised when I came back on day 2 telling me, the last guy didn't last this long. Next story. I worked 4 days at an Amazon warehouse and quit on the start of the 5th day. During my first day, they changed my hours to conflict with my college courses. They told me they would fix it, and I brought it up every day until the 5th day where I drew the line and I quit. They had some people coming in at 5 and some coming in at 6, and they told me to come in at 5 at first. But on the first day, they told me I'm 6 going forward. I told them to put me back on 5 and they said they couldn't. Next story. I took a position in a factory that makes the industrial shelving for grocery stores once, and at the orientation, the instructor asked me to take it easy the first day and equated it to football practice. So, show up on the line and see 7 dudes ranging from 20 to 40 all built like amateur boxers. Turns out the job was to grab these big 40-pound shelves, 2 at a time minimum, lift them above your head onto a moving hook belt for 12 hours with only a 30-minute lunch break. My ride wasn't going to be able to pick me up until the end of the day. The next morning, I was physically unable to move. I couldn't have gone back to that job if I wanted to. Next story. It's not crazy work, but I worked at a convenience store at the University of Kentucky Student Center back in the day and left in 4 months, and that was my fastest. You see, they had recently been bought out by Amarac, and my manager was not amazing. I ended up reorganizing the stocks in the basement to make resupplying easier, and then I was told that she would put me on a trial period for a promotion to assistant manager if I started ordering the stock resupply and maintaining the stock system. Decent pay raise. So, a month and a half later, I find out that she didn't have the authority to promote me. I told her I would work the remainder of the semester, 1 month, but only because I needed the pay and time to find a new gig. Well, she was unrepentant, yelled at me for telling my coworkers, and she ended up getting fired a few months after I left. But quitting your job on the spot is a privilege that many don't have, although I have been close. And a fun side story, the Aramark CEO visited the student center while I was waiting to leave. He scolded me because some of the sodas were not logo facing forward. I told him I wouldn't be doing that because it would take too much time, and I was running the shop by myself, so a trip to inventory meant the store was unmanned. The CEO was pissed, and my manager was mortified. Next story. I was 15 minutes into orientation, and the lady said they run the drivers until they hit their 70 hours. So I raised my hand and asked if she meant if I was on the job site and ran out of 70 hours if they were picking me up, or if I was close enough that I would go over, I would just be told to, I was done for the day. Well, it was run until you are out of hours, and it doesn't matter where you are. Just put the truck in park and wait for a ride. Noped the F out. It was driving cement mixers. Pay was okay, but I'm not sitting on a job site possibly for 45 minutes from the yard waiting on a ride. If it were 11 p.m. and I ran out of hours, I could be looking at punching in at 11 p.m. the next night to run nonstop until out of hours again. Next story. When COVID hit, I was let go from a company I had worked at for 8 years. I was the last round of people let go, and neither of us wanted it to happen, but it had to happen. Then I got a job that I was very meh on, but it paid the bills. About 6 months later, my old company reached out to me to offer me another job, and I've never left a job faster. Next story. Honda warehouse. Only allowed to use the bathroom when a bell rang. 30-minute lunch break, not enough time to go anywhere. And the Lime area had a bunch of machines selling you food. There was no fridge, so they were profiting off of our need for basic sustenance. Pay was $14 an hour in 2001. Not too bad, but they treat you like garbage when a misplaced staple can ruin a $300 gasket. I would have stuck around if I wasn't made to feel like an animal. It's crazy how we educate people into adulthood with all manner of math and science, and then you're not allowed to pee until the bell rings. Next story. I have 2 stories from my last year of college / first year of work. My 2-hour turnaround. I was working a dead-end call center job after college because I had to stay in a specific place and most opportunities were elsewhere to help family. I was getting really desperate not using my degree and started applying to things I found in the help wanted section in the before times. I interviewed at this one company that did some sort of lead generation for network software, nothing I had any remote knowledge of. But you would call up IT managers, ask them some questions, fished around to see if they were interested in this well-known company's product, and then forward the lead to a sales manager. But it was a nicer office in a nicer part of town, not the warehouse call center I was in. They offered me the job on the spot and I took it. I went home and realized that it was confirmation I could get another job. I was hireable, and that relieved so much worry and panic that I realized that was absolutely not the job I wanted and I could do better. I called them back and quit before I'd even really started. Felt bad about it, but I would have been a bad fit there. I do credit that experience with breaking me out of a malaise. I now have a career I wanted in my field, and I'm doing well. Then my other story is One Day Ditch. I was looking for some summer work my last year of college and saw an ad, again in the before times, in the paper for a public interest research group, PRIGs, if you know position. But my degree was in a public service related field, so I was excited. Well, it was not any sort of policy / office job like I had hoped, like working on a campaign or whatever. They recruited young people as street teams for fundraising. Not an MLM, it was straight pay with bonuses for an amount raised, and it was for a good cause, so I cautiously gave it a shot. They started the day getting us to memorize a script. At least it was an advocacy sort of thing. I think it was about pesticide use. But then it descended into some really sketchy group bonding culty stuff, getting us excited about a meeting, party sort of thing. Lots of hype, lots of emotional interaction to lure us in. Later in the day, they brought us all out into a big van to different neighborhoods with a handler for every 5 people or so, and then set us loose. After knocking on my 5th door and realizing how terrible I was asking old people for money, I just stopped asking for money and started talking to them about community issues. Just like, what's going on in their community? What are their concerns? Totally unrelated to the job, really just for my own edification, though a lot of people seemed to like having a chance to talk to someone. At the end of the day, they did one-on-one pressure sessions with us and tried to make me feel bad for not having raised a lot of money. I didn't come back the next day, and I didn't take pay for that day. I respect the organization's aims, but their fundraising practices at the time were not great. Next story, McDonald's. I worked there for like 3 days in which they just kind of put me to work. No training at all. I literally had to trial and error my way through those days. And when they said, "You're not learning fast enough, so we may have to let you go," I stopped working there the next day. I was 16 with decent savings and no expenses, so I had nothing to lose, and got a job at Walmart, which was way better like a month later. Next story, I got a job at a lockdown facility for teens, which was a rehab place for kids who had records or needed mental health help. In retrospect, it kind of felt like the Provo Canyon school Paris Hilton was abused at. However, after a day of training, it became clear the adults didn't give a crap and were barely treading water, and the kids weren't actually getting any treatment that they were supposed to be getting. Felt like an unregulated jail, left at lunch of day 2. A few months later, there was a massive riot at the facility and the SWAT team had to be brought in to reestablish order. So glad that I noped out. I feel bad for the kids there, and it's sadly still open 20 years later. Next story. I've quit 2 jobs on the first day. One was at a theater where I was hired to be a ticket seller. This was before it was all done online, and the manager yelled at me because I had dark green pants on. I left to change and never went back. The other was an oil change place. They sat me down in an unair-conditioned box in August in South Texas and made me watch videos all day long. No one spoke to me. I didn't go back. Next story. I was pricing home goods at Goodwill one summer, and the teenager who tested electronics had the most disgusting rap music ever playing full blast where customers could hear. I told the floor manager, and she seemed super scared of him and did nothing. So I went over and turned it down. I got called in by the main manager, who told me that was none of my business. I was a high school teacher and was only working there for the summer. Teenage boys, they didn't scare me. And I felt the whole thing was ridiculous and beneath me, so I walked out. I also emailed corporate because there had been a series of issues with this boy. For example, there were like these 3 elderly ladies sorting clothes, and he'd go up and sniff them. And he'd be like, "Smells like coochie. Which one of you pooped in the bathroom?" To which nothing was ever done. I was suspicious. Because of my email, corporate sent a team to investigate. Turned out the manager was using the boy to steal the good stuff instead of putting it out for sale. They both got fired. Next story. Sales job that was really just loading a bunch of people in a van with a bunch of cheap wicker to sell door to door. I lasted an hour and said, "F this." I did not sign up for this bullcrap. Went back to the van where the boss was sitting, and he asked me why I was back, and I said, "Open the effing door, I am done." Threw the wicker in the back and climbed in and waited for the other suckers to come back. Nobody lasted the full day, and it was an ugly ride back to the office. Actually kind of creepy. That was in 1983 in Vancouver. Next story. Chipotle. I was fresh out of high school and couldn't fold a burrito to save my life. The embarrassment was too much to handle for 19-year-old me. The way people looked at you heartbroken when you finished screwing up their burrito. I worked a single shift and just never went back.
All right, everybody. Now you may be wondering, what is Chipotle? Chipotle is a restaurant where you go get food and stuff. Some people call it Chipotle, but those people are wrong. It's not called Chipotle. I'm not gaslighting you. It's called Chipotle, okay? Next story.
Wendy's. I had interviewed in the lobby. When I came in for my first day, my boss handed me my hat at the register. I put on the hat, stepped behind the counter into the kitchen, then immediately stepped back into the lobby and removed the hat. Told her, "I can't work here," and then I left. It was so much louder behind the counter. All the little beeping machines. Anyway, turns out I have autism. Next story. I got a job canvassing for a probably not 100% bullcrap charity in San Francisco when I was out of college freshly. I went to the interview and knew something was up when she offered me the job on the spot, but I was broke, so I thought I'd give it a shot. She told me I would be running a booth at an events fair, but when I showed up, they gave us a t-shirt and a clipboard and told us to hit the street and ask people for their credit card info. I lasted about an hour before I decided I wasn't that broke and stepped onto a train home. Next story. Once, out of desperation, my friend's roommate got me a job at a liquor store. There was no training or anything the first day. I was on my own. A few clients kept coming in asking me for some of the pills behind the counter. I had no idea what they were talking about. About 3 hours into my shift, the owner came to check in on me and I explained the situation. He told me they sell Viagra and benzos under the table and I would have to do that as well. Shocked, I asked for a cigarette break, and as I was outside smoking, 2 cop cars pulled up with lights flashing and went inside. I just put out my cigarette, walked to my car, and drove away. I have no idea what happened, but no one ever contacted me. Next story. Call center job for an internet provider. Day 1 out of training, and they promised us that they would be there if we need them. 3 calls in, I'm getting screamed at. Policy was that we couldn't hang up no matter what. Found out from senior agents that if a customer asks for a manager, to basically ask one of them, because a manager will never come. And it's easier to lie to customers that you are one and that eventually you'll be able to do it too. Then the third and final call I took, I hung up on the screaming customer, logged out, and emailed HR asking how to send their equipment back. They never responded, but a week later, they emailed everyone in my training group, offering us all more training and a chance to show they can do better and give it longer than 3 days, they said. Found out that basically only 1 trainee made it to day 3 before quitting too. I never did send them their stuff back, not without trying. They called me 4 years later to ask me if I still had it and were annoyed when I said I didn't because I moved and sent them one final email 3 years earlier, giving 6 months to pick up before I moved. They told me I should have stored it somewhere. Next story. Just over a week, supply chain coordinator position in pharma. Great, I thought. Firstly, found out part of my job was to potter down to the warehouse and physically count packaging, types of bags, vacuum pack bags, Ziploc bags, etc. Then second, found out we had to access a website to access a computer in America order for us to do anything. So it all worked off of a browser tab, which constantly froze and didn't save info. Left immediately. Didn't want to see what the other crap surprises they had in store. Next story. A yoga studio. Manager straight up told me they were looking for part-timers to run the desk so that her and the owner could focus more on external marketing. She would take classes during her shift and then we would get in trouble if we would do that. She didn't know how to train worth crap and she gave us gift bags of coupons that we were supposed to hand out to schools and get email addresses as proof we actually went. I tried to give a 2-week notice and then said, "F that, I can't do this. This is not what you hired me for." Worked that night and then never again. Next story. I won't say the manufacturer, but it was a lip balm place. Think of Lucy and Ethel. And my job was to put the cap on. I got the job through a temp service. I lasted a day and a half. You see, the supervisor came around on the second day and told me that she was going to replace me if I didn't keep up. Then when she came around the second time, I asked her, "Where's my replacement?" And then I left at lunchtime. Next story. Dishwasher at a small restaurant. I lasted one shift. Asked the owner/chef when we got paid and he said next week. I told him I wasn't going to be coming back after that night. Asked for $40 cash and we'd call it even. He obliged and ended up giving me a bowl of risotto too. He was a cool guy. And fun fact, about a year later, a couple of my buddies got jobs as servers at the same restaurant and had nothing but good things to say about the owner. Next story. Roofing. I was working through a staffing agency and my normal job fell through that day. Supervisor there said there was a roofing job if I was up for it. I could follow him to the job site, climb up on the roof, and start handing the other guy shingles. I was not moving nearly fast enough, apparently. Turns out, I'm afraid of heights. About 5 minutes in, I told the guy it wasn't for me, but thanks for giving me a chance. The guy from the staffing agency was just sitting in his truck watching and laughing. Next story. I had one of those jobs in the mall where you try to find people to take surveys. The first 30 minutes was an orientation, then the manager took me out into the middle of the mall to try it out. I had to go up and get rejected by dozens of people continuously. But the worst part was, I was exposed to a seedy underbelly of people in the mall that I never noticed before. There are basically super shady people that try to get you to pick them so they can take the survey and get the free stuff for a couple of bucks. The manager knew all of the offenders and she would literally shoo them away like cockroaches. I quit after 15 minutes of trying it out. To their credit, they sent a check in the mail for an hour of my time. Massive respect to anyone who can handle that much rejection.
Oh man, guys, I think I would be perfect for this job. I just log into dating apps and then nothing happens and then I cry and my self-esteem plummets. Rejection is all I know, but 2026, Kevin, is done with those. Finito. I think now I'm gonna go leave the house and meet people IRL. Not really, I'm not gonna do that. But anyway, I'm just gonna keep narrating for you guys. Next story.
So, maybe lasted a month. It was my dishwashing gig. I was probably 19. Hours were crap. Boss was weird. Final straw. She asked me to grab something from the deep freezer, then cornered me in there with the door closed. Started ranting about how she knows my brother isn't really my brother. We worked together, different shifts, and I told her we're 100% siblings, not trying to prove it. And she ranted a bit more and we just stood there in silence. It was awkward. Finally, she said she didn't care and then just let me out. My brother and I had a shift that matched up and I told him what had happened. We walked out and while we were at the train station, she left a voicemail that said, "Hey, you're fired," because my brother's voicemail started with, "Hey." But also, side note, she won that cooking show where they have you gather your groceries from a freight grocery store in limited time. Next story. Ooh, I have a good one. I was hired on to work at a facility that processed the bodies of people who had donated their bodies to science. What a lot of people who sign up for this don't realize is that whole body donors are rare, meaning having your entire corpse donated to a medical facility for the students to study is uncommon. This is due to the fact that medical students need to study bodies that are intact, not missing many organs, and who overall died in good condition. There were weight requirements you needed to be in, a specific height range you needed to be in, etc., etc. So, what happens when you want to donate your body but you don't meet the criteria for whole body donation? We chop you up. That's correct. My job there was to dismember bodies and send the individual, quality, usable pieces that met standards to facilities that could use them. This translated into tasks like removing 5 heads and packaging them for a shipment to a facility that studied brains, eyes, or what have you. But I quit after my first day. The facility I worked at did not provide proper PPE for human dissection. During intake on a newly arrived body, I was tasked with removing the hospital tubing, clothing, accessories left on the body. This individual had an intra-kidney catheter that I needed to yoink out. Due to the fact that the body had been chilled in the body freezer, this little tube was stuck in there. I'm yanking and finally the tube comes flying out and smacking my bare, un-PPE'd face with blood and urine. Mind you, we had yet to test this person's blood for infectious disease. I decided the $13 an hour wasn't worth it, and I got home and said, nah. No wonder the previous staff had all quit and they were desperate to rehire. Next story, estate agent in Canary Wharf. I actually managed 6 months, 11-hour days, 6 days a week, for less than minimum wage. They would keep stringing you along because you'd get a little commissions from rentals that you organized, but they were paid very slowly, so the only way to make it work was to build up a load of past jobs you won. The worst thing, though, was all of the lying you were expected and actually encouraged to do, like telling people there had been loads of viewings on the property when there were none, or telling people their offer bid wasn't high enough and they'd have to offer more to secure it. Next story, Amazon. I had recently lost my business and just needed a part-time job because I couldn't do 6 to 7 days a week anymore, and it was just to get my brain in check. I was depressed and defeated. Week 1, part-time. Week 2, 6 days a week. I saw week 3 was also 6 days. I just used whatever PTO I had and then never came back. I was unemployed for about 4 months after that, and as you can imagine, I was more than broke. Next story. I always tried to stay at a job until I had another one, but when I was 18 and weighed a whopping 115 pounds, I got a job at Lowe's lumber filling orders by hand. Yes, it was rough. Particle board especially, some heavy crap. I made it 2 whole months and was really building up some muscle. Honestly, I was loading up a truck and then I had an aha moment. When I stepped off of the dock with some drywall in tow, gravity then took over and I ended up twisted on the ground with my ankle under me. In all fairness to me, and I felt blessed that my ankle was only bruised, not broken. After keeping my ankle elevated for 6 weeks, I just didn't go back. So long story short, 2 to 3 months. Next story, a babysitting job, where I was 18 years old. The most scared I've ever been in my life for sure. I've done childcare for many families. Even at that point, I was quite experienced. But this family gave me the strangest vibe. The parents were describing their son in a very tiptoe sort of way. They asked if I had experience with autistic children, and I told them no problem. I was given no additional info, but I accepted the job, which was to be a weekly situation. Well, this kid, he was 10, was not autistic. Or if he was, that was not the problem at hand. I'm no psychologist, so I cannot obviously diagnose anyone with anything, but this kid had real evil in his soul. He physically abused their pets. They had an elderly dog, a cat, and some sweet pet rats. He would punch his little sister, who was 5, and leave bruises. It was a horrific evening in which I basically had to constantly stop him from taking his rage out on any living thing in his reach. It came to a boiling point about 2 hours in when he demanded a second can of soda. His parents had specifically told me that they could only have one each, which I relayed to him and told him he would have to have some water instead. The kid walked into the kitchen, grabbed a steak knife, and just ran at me. Now, I'm a large athletic girl and he was like 10, so he only managed to cut me on the forearm before I got the knife away. I'm not ashamed to say I tossed that kid into a closet and locked him in there while I repeatedly called his parents until they finally answered, and I made them come home immediately. And I chewed them out, then reported it to the local CPS for the sister's sake. I don't know what became of that, but I obviously never went back. Next story. Quit after 2 days at very fine juice bottling plant. Entire job was moving flats of empty bottles from the ground onto the mechanical belt and then went on the merry path to be filled with juice. It was a horrible bend down and twist maneuver where they wanted like 1 flat every 3 seconds. They then tried to keep me after midnight even though I was 17 and it was a weekday and I had to go to school. My mother made me quit, but in all honesty, I probably would have quit myself within days as it was horribly painful. Next story. 20 years ago, I got a job at Sony on an assembly line putting together big screen TVs. The TV would get to me, and I would put on some plastic piece and put in 4 or 6 screws or something. There may have been a couple other little steps or another piece, but that was generic deal. Well, we had to wear hearing protection, cloth gloves, face mask to keep from spitting on the screens, and it was fairly loud. It was impossible to talk to anyone else, even if they were close enough to yell at. Then there was a big screen at one end of the line with the numbers of what was assembled that day. Pay was not that bad if I recall, especially for the time and area, plus lots of overtime, 10 or 12-hour shifts. I did 2 days of training, which was super easy, basically learning how to use an electronic screwdriver. I just spent 5 years as a mechanic in the military, and the work was not physically demanding at all. Well, I told them I was out at lunchtime and gave them the courtesy of finishing out the whole first day. It was the most mind-numbing, god-awful assembly line to perdition I've ever seen. Next story. Best Buy. Day 2 or 3, a couple of coworkers were talking about queers and male juices and having sex in the butt in front of customers. Later that night, I told the floor manager that the guys needed to calm down on the floor or take it to the break room or something. I was never scheduled again. I thought I was being helpful. I guess I was quitting. Next story. Making electrical staples, the machines were horrible. Like a problem that would shut you down for 10 minutes happening every half hour or so. The only supervisor on my shift was quick to actually tell if our machine was down or not. I left on my lunch break without a word after 2 months. I've pretty much only worked in manufacturing, so I'm used to how it goes, but that place was horrible. It was only like a year later that the place didn't even exist anymore, and I'm not surprised. Next story. story, FedEx warehouse job, and I quit during my welcome training video. My first day during initial welcoming video, they told us we are not allowed to have our phones on when we enter the building to ensure we don't get distracted. I asked the training leader, what happens if there's an active shooter in the warehouse? How do we call for help? And she told me there are marked phones throughout the warehouse that we could use. I told her in this day and age, I don't feel comfortable nor safe not being able to call for help, or at the very least call my mom to tell her I love her before dying. So I got up and walked out of the training and never went back. I received my first and final check in the mail from them for about a week or two later for like $4. Made me chuckle. Next story, I managed a total of 10 hours at a recycling sorting station. First day, stand in front of a conveyor belt and sort out the cardboard from the rest of the trash. Second day, same thing, but on the other side of the conveyor belt. It took me 3 days for my brain and head to stop spinning from the vertigo that looking left and right, fast scanning for specific types of materials while everything flows quickly one way caused. My brain just could not handle things going both directions quickly while trying to also focus on certain shapes and colors. Never again. Next story. When I was 20, I took a temp job doing I don't know what. I walked into a darkish room with a large vat, the size of a round above-ground pool, of some dark, thick liquid. People were dipping metal hooks into the liquid and then hanging them on a clothesline type thing. It was never explained what the liquid was or what the finished product was supposed to be. I did not dip a single hook and I left immediately. All I could think was that job was going to cause health problems down the road. Next story. Roofing supply company metal shop. Fabricating custom roofing using an industrial metal cutter, finger breaker, and a panel roller. $11 an hour, 6 days a week, no lunch breaks. The half hour is deducted anyway. And I got my health insurance after 6 months, found out I was going to be a father, and then got laid off for winter within days. They called me in January after months of surviving off of $120 a week of unemployment and applying everywhere I could. I told them I would absolutely never work there again. Both of my colleagues quit too, and I would have been in there alone. Next story. I got a job at a plastic surgeon's office in Beverly Hills as a social media coordinator. The doctor made me watch him give a woman a forehead reduction live, which including him slicing the woman's forehead with a scalpel and forcibly bringing the skin down. It was so gross and I audibly made a barf noise because I couldn't help it. Everyone in the room was pissed at me. I was 3 days into the job and quit on the spot. Next story. I work as an ophthalmic photographer, which means I photograph things inside the eye when people have bleeds, tears, etc. inside of the eye. On my second day at a retinal surgeon's office, we had 1 day post-op patients, meaning there wasn't going to be a lot for me to photograph because following retinal surgery, there's too much blood and other vitreous debris to see anything to photograph. However, patients would still be sent to me, and I'd take a look through the lens, realize there's nothing to see, and then send them on their way without photographing. Eventually, I guess someone realized that I wasn't taking any pictures, and I was told that I needed to call all of the patients I didn't photograph back and have them come back in and take pictures. I explained that there was no view and nothing to photograph, and I was told that it didn't matter, and that if I tried to take a picture and had one in the chart, the office could bill for the attempt. So, I walked out that same day after refusing to do it. I'd been an ophthalmic photographer for over 10 years by that time, including in larger university-based health systems as well as hospital-based health systems, and this was absolutely not the standard of care. I should have reported the doctor to the board, but I didn't. I still live with that regret over a decade later. Next story. Lasted less than 1 hour. Showed up for a shift as a server at a Brazilian steakhouse. Walked in 15 minutes early and saw the employees were trying to tend to a leak in the ceiling with a bunch of buckets and scrambling to figure out who was on for the dinner shift. No one on the team tried to show me around or even acknowledge me that I was there. I went behind the bar with the bartender who was working and asked if he could show me anything. He said maybe another day. He was too busy. I walked into the kitchen and said it's my first day, asked to be shown stuff. They didn't speak English. I asked the manager who did speak it, and when I was shown to him and explained it was my first day and I was eager to learn. He wasn't expecting a new employee that day and didn't have anything for me. Told me to come back tomorrow. I said no thanks.
All right, everybody. So you know what this is, right? OP walked into season 3 to 6 of a TV show. I don't know what was going on. He was a new character. They were in the middle of a story arc and 2 of the servers are in love with each other. Yeah, but whatever OP walked into, he was not destined to be a character in this story because they had so much other stuff going on. That's like when Jack Black tried to join the community in Community. The study group, that's the word. Also, while recording this video, I had an idea for a video we should do, so I'm going to request that we can get stories for that thing, but I won't say what it is. But if it does happen, I'm totally taking credit for it. But anyway, guys, we're at the end of the video. Thank you all so much for watching, commenting, have a really good day, and bye-bye!